Imagine marching with the world's most powerful army, only to stumble upon a horrifying forest of 20,000 rotting bodies impaled on stakes, some still alive and moaning. This wasn't a nightmare. This was Vlad the Impaler's welcome gift to the Ottoman Sultan. And it shocked even his brutal enemies. Vlad Roman III, known to history as Vlad the Impaler or Vlad Dracula, was born around 1431 in the fortified town of Sayora in Transylvania, the second son of Vlad Roman II Dracul, Prince of Wallachia. His father had earned the nickname Dracul, meaning the dragon, after being inducted into the Order of the Dragon, a Christian military order dedicated to defending Europe against the expanding Ottoman Empire. The young Vlad grew up in a world where Wallachia, a small principality sandwiched between the powerful kingdom of Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, constantly balanced on the edge of survival through tribute, diplomacy, and occasional rebellion. In 1442, when Vlad was about 11 years old, his father made a fateful decision to secure an alliance with Sultan Mehmed Roman II. To guarantee Vlad Roman II's loyalty and good behavior, the Ottomans demanded hostages. Vlad and his younger brother Radu were handed over to the Sultan's court, taken to the imperial palace at Edirne, and later to other Ottoman strongholds. This was not uncommon in the politics of the time, but for the boys it marked the beginning of years in captivity. During their time as hostages, Vlad and Radu lived under close supervision. They were educated in Ottoman ways, learning Turkish, Arabic, horsemanship, archery, and the arts of war according to Muslim military tradition. Vlad, described even then as sharp-minded and strong-willed, observed the inner workings of the empire that dominated half of southeastern Europe. He witnessed the ruthless efficiency of Ottoman justice, public executions, and the absolute power of the Sultan. Some historians suggest he saw impalement used as punishment, a method the Ottomans had adopted from earlier Persian and steppe traditions, though they employed it far less systematically than Vlad later would. The treatment of the hostages varied. Radu, younger and reportedly more adaptable, grew close to the Ottoman court and eventually converted to Islam, earning favor with the future Sultan Mehmed Roman II. Vlad, however, remained defiant. Chroniclers later claimed he was subjected to harsh discipline, possibly flogged for his stubbornness and refusal to fully submit. Whether these accounts are exaggerated or not, the years in captivity forged a deep, burning resentment in him toward the Ottomans. He saw his father's submission as weakness and the empire's demands as humiliation for his people. In 1447, tragedy struck when Vlad's father and older brother Mircea were killed in a coup, supported by Hungarian regent John Hunyadi. Vlad Dracul was drowned and Mircea was buried alive. The throne passed briefly to a pro-Hungarian ruler, but the young Vlad, still in Ottoman hands, was now a potential pawn. The Ottomans released him in 1448, supporting his brief first reign at age 17. But he was quickly driven out by Hungarian-backed forces. These early experiences, the betrayal of his family, the murder of his father and brother, and above all the years spent as a hostage under Ottoman control, shaped Vlad into a ruler obsessed with independence and vengeance. When he finally seized the Wallachian throne for the second time in 1456, he came to power with a single-minded determination. Wallachia would never again bow to the Sultan. He stopped paying the annual tribute in money and boys for the Janissary Corps, executed or impaled Ottoman envoys who demanded submission, and began preparing for the inevitable retaliation. The hatred born in those childhood years in Edirne would soon fuel one of the most terrifying campaigns of psychological warfare in medieval history. By early 1462, Sultan Mehmed II, had reached the limit of his patience with Vlad's defiance. For years, the Prince of Wallachia had refused to pay the annual tribute in gold and young boys destined for the Janissary Corps. He had executed Ottoman merchants, impaled envoys who demanded submission, and openly allied himself with Hungary's King Matthias Corvinus. Mehmed, fresh from his triumph at Constantinople a decade earlier, decided to end the rebellion once and for all. He assembled one of the largest armies of the century. Contemporary estimates range from 90,000 to as high as 150,000 men, including elite janissaries, Sipahi cavalry, and vast auxiliary forces drawn from across the empire. The goal was simple: crush Vlad, raise Wallachia, and install his compliant brother Radu on the throne. Vlad knew he could not meet such a force in open battle. His standing army was tiny, perhaps 10,000 to 15,000 professional soldiers at best, supplemented by peasant levies that might bring the total to 30,000 under the most optimistic counts. Wallachia's strength lay not in numbers, but in its rugged terrain, dense forests, winding mountain passes, and the broad, swampy Danube floodplain that formed its southern border. Vlad chose to exploit every advantage geography offered and turn the campaign into a prolonged nightmare for the invaders. From the moment Ottoman scouts crossed the Danube in late spring 1462, they entered a land deliberately laid waste. Vlad ordered a scorched-earth retreat, villages burned, crops torched, livestock driven into the mountains, wells poisoned or filled with debris. Anything that could sustain an invading army was destroyed. Ottoman chroniclers later complained that for days their soldiers marched through smoking ruins, finding neither food nor clean water. Hunger and thirst began to erode discipline almost immediately. Vlad's active forces operated as mobile guerrilla bands. Small units of cavalry and archers struck supply lines, ambushed foraging parties, and vanished into the forests before reinforcements could arrive. Night raids became a signature terror. Wallachian riders would infiltrate Ottoman camps under cover of darkness, set fires, loose arrows into crowded tents, and retreat, leaving panic in their wake. Captives taken during these hit and run attacks were rarely killed outright. Instead, Vlad accumulated prisoners, Ottoman soldiers, Bulgarian auxiliaries who had joined the Sultan, local merchants suspected of collaboration, even civilians caught in the wrong place. These raids extended far beyond Wallachia's borders. Vlad launched daring cross-Danube incursions into Ottoman, controlled Bulgaria, burning towns like Nikopol and capturing thousands more. Each prisoner added to his growing reserve of human material for the psychological campaign he was meticulously preparing. He understood that against overwhelming odds, victory lay not in destroying the Ottoman army physically, but in breaking its will to continue. The prisoners would become the instrument of that breaking, held and transported northward as his forces fell back toward the capital at Târgoviște. The stage was being set for the moment when Mehmed's vast host would encounter something far more devastating than any battlefield defeat: impalement, the punishment that earned Vlad his infamous nickname Ep, or the Impaler, was not a quick execution, but a deliberately prolonged and agonizing death designed to instill maximum terror. The method, drawn from traditions Vlad likely observed during his years as an Ottoman hostage and adapted from practices used across the region, including by the Ottomans themselves, involved a thick wooden stake, often rounded or blunted at the tip rather than sharply pointed to prevent immediate fatal injury. Executioners greased the end with animal fat or oil to ease insertion, while ensuring the victim survived longer. Victims were typically stripped and bound, then positioned over the stake. The most common technique for Ottoman prisoners and others was longitudinal impalement. The stake was forced into the rectum or vagina, carefully angled to avoid piercing vital organs like the heart or spine initially. Gravity and the victim's own weight did the rest. As the stake was raised upright, the body slowly slid downward over hours or days, the blunt end tearing through flesh and intestines in excruciating increments. Contemporary accounts describe how skilled executioners could prolong life for up to a week, with victims writhing, moaning, and begging as internal damage mounted and infection set in. Birds often pecked at exposed wounds, adding to the horror. Vlad varied the method for emphasis. High-ranking captives, such as Ottoman commanders like Hamza Pasha, were placed on taller stakes for greater visibility and symbolic dominance. Some victims were impaled upside down or through the abdomen to accelerate suffering for those who had particularly offended him. For Turkish prisoners specifically, additional tortures sometimes preceded the stake, such as flaying the soles of the feet to force agonizing marches before the final act. Byzantine chronicler Leonikos Chalkokondyles and German pamphlets from the era detail how Vlad applied this systematically to thousands captured in raids, refusing ransom or swift mercy to amplify psychological impact. The brutality served dual purposes: retribution against invaders and a deterrent to future ones. Ottoman soldiers, accustomed to harsh punishments in their own empire, including occasional impalement, found Vlad's scale and precision unsettling. Prisoners were not killed outright, but preserved in torment, their groans echoing across camps as a warning. Woodblock illustrations from the late 15th century depict these scenes vividly. Rows of stakes with bodies in various stages of agony, Vlad sometimes shown observing or dining nearby to underscore his unflinching control. This calculated savagery extended beyond soldiers to include Bulgarian auxiliaries, civilians suspected of collaboration, and even women and children in some mass executions, ensuring no sympathy could form among enemies. Vlad's men became proficient, erecting stakes rapidly during retreats to prepare displays for advancing forces. The act transformed captured Ottomans from potential bargaining chips into instruments of warfare, their suffering broadcast as a message that Wallachia would yield no easy conquest. As maimed Roman II's colossal army, swelling to 90,000 to 300,000 men by various chronicles like those of Leonikos Chalkokondyles and Tursun Beg, pressed northward through the scorched remnants of Wallachia in late June 1462, they had already endured days of torment. Wells poisoned with corpses, villages reduced to ash, and relentless guerrilla strikes had left the Janissaries and Sipahis parched, hungry, and unnerved. Vlad's forces, retreating toward Târgoviște, the fortified capital perched amid the Carpathian foothills, had stockpiled their grim harvest from earlier raids. Ottoman soldiers captured at Giurgiu, Bulgarian collaborators from cross-Danube incursions, and even civilians swept up in the chaos. Vlad's letter to Hungarian King Matthias Corvinus on February 11, 1462, tallied 884 Turks and Bulgarians slain in those winter forays alone, many preserved for this precise moment. The field lay just outside Târgoviște's walls, likely in a broad plain near the palace or along the major road from the Danube, a site chosen for maximum visibility as executions in Wallachia demanded public spectacle. Contemporary estimates vary wildly, reflecting the era's blend of eyewitness horror and propaganda. Chalkokondyles, the Byzantine historian, described a forest of the impaled, spanning over 7 acres, with some 20,000 stakes thrusting skyward like a macabre grove. Ottoman chronicler Enveri, who marched with the army, corroborated the sight of a full field, without specifying numbers, while later German pamphlets inflated it to match Vlad's own raid totals. Recent analysis by historian Deans Harry in the 2025 Transactions of the Royal Historical Society applies demographic data and plausibility rates from census record, round 8-8, 5% survival post-massacre, to estimate the display at 1/600-1 700 bodies, still a staggering assembly requiring weeks of labor by Vlad's peasants to erect stakes hewn from local oak. The arrangement was deliberate artistry in atrocity, stakes graduated by height and victim rank, forming concentric circles or grim avenues that forced the Ottomans to march through for half an hour, per some accounts. Lower poles held common soldiers, their bodies bloated and flice, warmed after days or weeks in the summer sun, entrails spilling where birds nested and pecked. Women and children, Bulgarian auxiliaries' families, or unfortunates from razed towns, were skewered together, mothers with infants thrust headfirst into mutilated torsos, as detailed in the German stories of Dracula. At the epicenter towered the tallest stakes, reserved for taunt, the rotting corpse of Hamza Pasha, or Bey, the Nicopolis governor captured at Giurgiu after his failed ambush. Vlad's February letter confirms the feat. The lord of the stronghold was killed, and it was there that Hamza Bey was captured, and Chalkokondyles notes his limbs severed pre-impalement, body hauled to Târgoviște for display under the prince's windows. The stench hit first, a miasma of decay that turned stomachs amid the heat. Then the moans. Skilled executioners had angled stakes through rectum or gut to spare the heart, prolonging agony for days. Ottoman troops, veterans of Constantinople's sack in 1453, recoiled, mutterings spread of jinn or divine curse. Maimed the 30-year-old conqueror who toppled empires, reined in atop his steed, face paling. Chalkokondyles captures his words. The Sultan was seized with amazement and said that it was not possible to deprive of his country a man who had done such great deeds, who had such a diabolical understanding of how to govern his realm and its people. And he said that a man who had done such things was worth much. Admiration laced with dread. Even Tursun Beg, the Sultan's secretary, implied the thirst and horrors eroded will. Battle, hardened ranks faltered. Dysentery from poisoned wells compounded the nightmare. This was no mere slaughter but theater of terror, the crescendo of Vlad's asymmetric war. After a futile night raid on June 17, where Vlad's cavalry nearly reached Mehmed's tent, laying vizier's guards but missing the Sultan, the field sealed the campaign's psychology. Mehmed ordered trenches dug for defense, but by June 22, retreat began toward Brela, installing Radu instead. Wallachia held, briefly unconquered, as the forest, etched Vlad into legend, hero to some, monster to Saxons and Turks alike. The sight of the vast field of impaled bodies outside Târgoviște struck the Ottoman army like a physical blow, compounding weeks of hardship from scorched earth, poisoned wells, thirst, and relentless guerrilla harassment. Contemporary Byzantine historian Leonikos Chalkokondyles recorded that Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople and a veteran of brutal sieges, halted in amazement before the spectacle. He reportedly declared that he could not deprive the world of a ruler capable of such diabolical deeds, acknowledging Vlad's ruthless genius in governance and warfare, even as the display horrified his troops. Ottoman chroniclers like Tursun Beg, who accompanied the Sultan, described the cumulative toll: extreme heat, lack of water and forage, disease spreading through the ranks, and the constant fear of ambush. The forest of stakes, whether 20-0 0 as Chalkokondyles claimed or closer to Vlad's own tally of 23,884 slain earlier, with recent estimates by Dean's Hare, I suggesting around 1,600-1,700 on display, represented not just death but prolonged torment, with some victims still alive and moaning. Battle, hardened janissaries and sipahis, accustomed to the empire's own harsh punishments, recoiled at the scale and precision. Mutters of supernatural curse or divine judgment rippled through the camp, eroding discipline among an army already strained by dysentery and supply shortages. This psychological fracture deepened in the days following Vlad's daring night attack on June 17, leading perhaps 7-0 to 10-0 horsemen in disguise. Vlad infiltrated the vast Ottoman encampment under torchlight, aiming to assassinate Mehmed in his tent. Chaos erupted for hours, trumpets blaring, Wallachian riders slashing through tents, killing thousands. Estimates reach 15,000 Ottoman casualties in panicked confusion. Though the attackers mistook viziers' tents for the Sultan's and withdrew at dawn without capturing Mehmed, the raid exposed the invaders' vulnerability and further demoralized them. Mehmed ordered defensive trenches dug around the camp, a sign of caution uncharacteristic for the aggressive conqueror. By June 22, he initiated retreat toward Brela, burning the port before withdrawing across the Danube to Adrianople. The Sultan left behind Vlad's brother Radu with a smaller force to rally pro-Ottoman boyars, taking captives, livestock, and cattle as consolation. While scorched earth and harassment contributed, sources like Chalkokondyles and later accounts emphasize the impalement display as the breaking point that sapped the army's will to press deeper into hostile territory. Vlad's calculated terror achieved its aim, preserving Wallachian independence temporarily and earning him acclaim across Christian Europe as a bulwark against Ottoman expansion. To Romanians, he emerged as a fierce defender; to enemies, an inhuman monster whose methods outstripped even the empire's brutality. The campaign cemented his legend, blending retribution with strategic brilliance in a war where conventional victory was impossible. Yet Vlad's throne fell soon after to his brother Radu, backed by Ottoman might. He died in battle in 1476 or 1477, fighting to reclaim Wallachia one last time. His name endured, twisted through German pamphlets into monstrous tales that inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula centuries later. Vlad the Impaler, hero, tyrant, or both, his forest of stakes remains a testament to the raw edge of medieval survival. Thanks for watching and diving into this brutal chapter of history with me. If you found Vlad's story as shocking as the Ottomans did, smash that like button. Drop a comment below on whether you see him as a defender or a monster. And subscribe for more untold tales of terror and triumph. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Next time, we uncover another dark legend. Share this with a friend who loves history's wild side, and I'll see you in the next one.